let's take a couple of minutes to recap and show how we forged this knife. What's up, everybody? So we're back on the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we are going to be finishing the X-Ray Integral Quenching. So of course, the last episode that we did with this, we forged out everything that you see here. Forged out our blade, did our integral bolster area, of course forged out our entire tail, folded it over onto the bolster, made sure everything was nice and even. Got everything set up. Now that was all forging. I did clean up some of it on the 2x72 just to refine the profile a little bit. But in this episode, what we need to do is, well, for one, finish this, but we need to go ahead and drill our connecting pin here. So I'm going to be peening in a brass pin that goes from this piece in through the bolster. So I've got to drill a hole, flare out the end of the hole so that whenever we peen it, it really, you know, has a good bond or good mechanical hold so that pin can flare out a little bit and fill it up. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be profiling the handle. Basically right now it's super square and I don't want it to be super square. We're going to be rounding all of this. If you've ever seen the thicker handled X-ray knives that Lin Ray does, you'll see what I'm talking about, where he profiles it down and it makes it more comfortable. So we're going to be doing that. We got to be grinding in some pre-heat treat bevels, do the heat treat on it, and then we'll finish out the bevels after that. What's going to end up happening is we're going to have a cool little step down from the bolster area down to where this line is. So it's going to come in and then it's going to come in again where that plunge line comes down to the cutting edge and comes all the way through the end. I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be real unique whenever we get it all done and you actually get to see the difference between the forged texture areas and then the clean, smooth finish of the rest of the stuff. I think it'll make sense and I think it'll look really cool when it's all said and done. So first things first, we need to go ahead and drill that hole because we can't do any heat treating until that hole's done, because that would be horrible to try and drill through once this is heat treated. So drill that, grind in these pre-heat treat bevels, get some heat treating done. Let's get it. So I went ahead and punched the center on here, and then I taped the drill bit so that I knew how far I wanted to go in. Once I hit the tape, that's when we're going to stop drilling in. That way we don't go too far into the bolster. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a slight bevel on this hole right here so that whenever I peen it in, it can flare out and really lock this piece in. Now you might be wondering why I went as far in as I did. That's because this section right here, this little step up that you see right here, that's going to be removed. So I needed to countersink it enough to where whenever I profile all of this, there's still a flare. And basically all I did was I made sure that I still had plenty of meat left inside there, and then brought it down so that I'll have a flare when it's all said and done. So I went ahead and marked a center line all the way down the edge. This is going to be pre-heat treat thickness, so we're not super fine on there. So pre-heat treat thickness, we're going to go ahead, grind down to our center edge, bring it up to about a third of the height of the bevels here. So bring it up just a little bit so that when we go and heat treat, we know that we can get a nice, bit of that oil quenching pretty close to where the cutting edge is going to be. I like to just make sure that it's going to be able to get that nice hardness that we're going for. And this is going to be a pretty hard blade. I'm shooting for roughly around a 63 hardness. So I want a 65 to bite just a hair, but a 60 to absolutely skate. So that's the goal there. We'll see how it goes. So what we're doing here, of course, we ground all the way down to that line that I scribed, and then I ended up grinding that line away. So whenever I do that to this other side, we'll end up with just under a 1/16 of an inch. Well, it'll be right at about a 1/16 of an inch all the way down the edge. And the reason why I like doing it this way is because let's say we develop a little bit of a warp going down here. Well, I can easily come in with my straightening hammer and straighten by hammering this whole entire flat section right here that's going to be ground away. So I can straighten it up after the quench, get it nice and even, and then I'll end up grinding all that stuff off, and it won't mess with any of our good texture or make me have to grind it thinner than I want. So leave it thick throughout this midsection so I can always use that straightening hammer to get everything back in line. So now all I'm going to do, ground the other side, and then we'll go ahead and start our normalizing. So normalizing cycle, and then grain refinement cycle and heat treat. Sirens going off in the background. All right, so we did our round of 1600, let it cool. Then we did our round of 1400. Now we're letting it cool. So basically the first one was a normalizing cycle, 1600, bring it all the way up to that, and then let it cool outside the forge. This was a grain refinement cycle, so bring it up to 1400, let it cool outside the forge, and then all we're going to do after that is go ahead and do our heat treat process, which is going to be bringing it up to about 1500 degrees, and then quenching it in Parks 50. So that's the next step after this. We're going to let it cool down to about 100 degrees, and then we'll bring it back up to temp right at about 1500 degrees, and then we'll quench it. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and file the decarb layer off of the edge, and then we'll use our hardness files to see where we're actually at hardness wise. Surprisingly enough, there's not much decarb on the edge of this. Yeah, that's already skating a file. So we'll go ahead, try a 65 on this. .65 does nothing to it, so we'll go ahead and I'm going to temper this at 350 for 2 hours, and we should be about where we want to be. So we're going to do 350 for 2 hours. We're going to do that twice, and then we'll file test it afterwards. So now that we're done with the tempering process, we can go ahead and try a 60 HRC file. Okay, that skates. We'll try our 65, see if we can get it to bite. Yeah, we're able to put little scratches in there. They're not much of scratches, but we are getting little scratches on there. So that's good. 65 scratches it. And a 60 skates. That's what we were looking for on that. So now what we got to do, go ahead, finish cleaning up the bevels on here, and then clean up the handle area, then go ahead and peen up our, little attachment area right here for our handle, which should be good. So now all we got to do is go ahead and finish grinding our bevels up to the height that we want and get our edge thickness down to where we want it, which is going to be close to 0. So all we got to do is do that. We're using a 36 grit belt, get it cleaned up. Now before we get too close to finishing this, we need to go ahead and peen this pin in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start peening it in, and then I'm going to end up trimming it down once I get it to fit snug in there. We're going to trim it down, and then we'll peen it the rest of the way, and then we'll finish putting our little finish on the handle, and then we can go ahead and vinegar soak it. So now we got that cleaned up. So you'll see I left this like 36 grit texture on the whole entire spine and handle and everything. I ended up rounding all of this. All that is going to be for a reason. So we're going to put this in here, and then we are going to vinegar soak it. Now, I've never done vinegar soak with brass, so we're going to see how it goes about this little area here. But we're going to vinegar soak it for about 4 hours. We're going to see how that does. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I want to turn it up onto its spine. If I can get it to stand up right there. There we go. Alright. So this is 30% vinegar. This is like cleaning vinegar. It's pretty hardcore stuff. It has a real bad odor. So just be mindful of that. Make sure you're doing this in an area with a lot of air. But we're going to let this soak for about 4 hours. Alright. We are going to leave it right here. And now I've got to finish cleaning it. I'm going to go clean it with soap and water. And then we'll go ahead and do the last bit of finish on it after that. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is take some CLP and then coat the whole entire thing and hit it with a Scotch-Brite pad. And this is going to finish out our, overall finish on it. We're going to go over the whole entire thing. Okay, let's wipe it down. It's definitely sharp. Now, it's pretty cool to have made the internet's first integral bolstered X-ray handled Quenching. So there's not another one of these on the internet. Not on Google, not on YouTube. This is the first one of its kind, which is pretty cool. Now, I love how the frame of this comes all the way back and meets the bolster and ties together so that it's just seamless. And of course we have our brass pin peened in right there. I love the way this looks. Now I left the forge texture across the back side of it just for an extra little flair. And then of course I love the way that this tapers down from the bolster into the ricasso and then into the cutting edge from the plunges. I love that it just comes down and then it comes down again. The blade looks awesome. Got our forge texture all the way across the bolster, ricasso, and the flats. And then I left the 36 grit finish all the way down and on the handle. Some of y'all may be wondering why I did that as opposed to sanding it. And the whole point behind that was to have some sort of texture on the handle so you really get a good grip onto it without worrying about your hand slipping everywhere. If I would have sanded it like super smooth, you would have had no grip. It would have just been slipping and sliding on the handle, and I didn't want that, so that's why I left that. But I'm happy that I went with the brass pin as opposed to one that just blended in. I think that looks really cool. I love how that flows in there, and the fact that this is all one piece. Everything on here is one piece. Turned out super cool. And again, that right there is the internet's first integral bolstered, X-ray handled Quenching. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this build. If you did, make sure give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. We've got a bunch of other projects. I've got some more daily vlog stuff that's going to be coming out this week, and then we're going to go from there. All right, guys, y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there, and I'll catch y'all next time.